Hello ladies and gentlemen, SeKo Starcraft, back with some more pro replays from the RSL, Quantic Hyun, Evil Genius's Huk. Haven't casted much from Huk in a long time. I almost said good luck, have fuck, for a second. Both would have been okay. I've done alright with that, totally. Now this is another one of those crazy RSL maps that this one I don't think I've actually played on or seen before. Looks like it is a 4-player map, considering that we have scouts going to the corners from our zerg player, so no cross spawn seems to be set up. Now I'm hoping that Huk has the opportunity to make a bit of a splash here in the next little while. I'm from Canada, he's a Canadian player, so I kind of pull for my like-minded kind. Though unfortunately for the last year or so, he hasn't really been at top form, or at least really been at the highest levels that we're used to seeing him at, you know, taking some of the MLGs, being over into the higher rounds of the GSL. Now, obviously, Evil Genius has picked up some new Korean players that are doing really well. Huk still is a part of that team, but this is some of the first games I've casted from him in a long time, so I'm hoping he's going to be able to bring out some good action here against Hyun, who is obviously a top-notch player. Took number 2 against Polt in the most recent MLG, won some ridiculous amount of Zotac Cups and everything else like that, just micro tournaments. Just an overall top level Zerg player. Opening up with a hatch first. It's a 4-player map, so I'm sure he's a little bit more confident doing that, even though when you play against a Protoss player, you don't always know what you're going to get. We have 2 gas even before the first gateway finishes, so I'm assuming some sort of really fast tech, maybe some sort of cheese. It is only the 2 in each gas kind of setup, so it might be just into an early Twilight Council and a Dark Shrine. Maybe he wants to go for some sort of Stargate play, but it is obviously delaying him from getting any type of high economy. Back on this side, we did have a gas thrown down shortly after the spawning pool. He's likely going to want to get up to speed pretty fast. Over the last little while, I've noticed that getting the speed out for your Zerglings, even against Protoss, is starting to become really important. If you're not going to get that roach play out, having the really fast Zerglings to go around the map, look for proxy pylons, track down probes. That way you're not going to get cheesed off by some sort of 3-gate or 2-base 6-gate, something of that nature, which we're seeing a lot of. Either the Protoss has a plan of going 2-base all in, or going for some sort of 3-base macro, and just holding up until he gets out a really big army that he can tackle just about anything with. The Nexus is finally going down on this side. There's not too much to really be afraid of at this point. He hasn't seen his opponent. Huk hasn't even sent out a single scout yet. Looks like he's just finally going to be sending out the Mothership Core. And let's see if he guesses cross spawns correctly. Just a pair of lings going to be checking out on the map. That speed is started nice and early, like I said. So that way if he sniffs any type of pressure, he should be able to deal with it. Obviously not seeing anything corner, so he's got a pretty good idea of where his opponent is going to be set up. A couple shots got off on one ling, but it does manage to get away before the Mothership Core can take it out. I'm enjoying an extra tasty strawberry mojito right now. Picked up some Hendrick's gin, decided to go a little funky on some drinks, because I absolutely enjoy it to no end. I used to be a bartender. You guys don't know that about me, but it was something I used when I was going through college. Paid great. Getting the tips, getting the chance to go kind of party for free, and it also meant you worked mostly Friday and Saturday nights, so you couldn't really spend money anywhere. So it's a good tip for anybody that's putting themselves through college. Go out there and get yourself working at a bar, even if you're portering. It's a great little job to get a little bit of cash. We see really good map awareness right now from Hyun. Looks like he just kind of wanted to poke away. Sploosh. Cute little guy. There's been no third. There's the third base. I was about to say, we're getting close to that 7-minute mark, and on this big of a map, you'd almost feel certain that there would have been that third base going down. Let's see if we can get that drone before it goes. Oh, very nice pick off there by Huk. Just being able to deny any type of expansion. Good pickup on this pylon. That's what you really want these speedlings out here to do, is make sure that you can't get any cheap pressure against you. Lots of expansions on this map. It looks like it's played out that you can have some really good long games on it. Huk is down a fair bit in supply, but as a Protoss that's spending quite a bit on tech, that doesn't surprise me too much. It looks like he may have lost one of his stalkers there. They're out on the map. Bit of a supply block here for Hyun. He's not even making any overlords right now. He's got 2 hatches and his lair on the way. But he's got money to make overlords. And larva. Now he's making 5. So he got a little flustered there for a moment, it seems. That's a little uncommon to see somebody of this caliber putting out that many overlords at once. You're more likely to see something like that from me, whereas I'm like, oh, I'm supply blocked. Oh, I've got 500 minerals. Let me spend that all quickly on everything I can. There's a random splash of zerglings kind of all over the place. Looks like he was still just looking for any type of pylons he could. You know, even though the mothership core really isn't that effective, you can see how much damage it's really gone done. It almost took this thing down to half health. When it spawns, it will be at about half health there. So that's pretty effective use of that mothership core in the early game here. Creep spread isn't anything too ridiculous, but it should allow him to attach his 3rd and 4th base here pretty quickly. I wouldn't be too surprised if the Protoss starts thinking about a 3rd base, but as it stands right now, it looks like it's a little bit more interest in Huk going for some 2 base pressure, more gateways going down, not really super interested in getting out any sort of further economy. There's a pretty big pile of roaches crossing the map right now. I don't think it's going to be enough to really... Yes, kitty cat, I'll spend a little bit of time with you. This is a little unfortunate here for Hyun. I mean, he doesn't really want to lose these queens. He's already lost 1. Good transfusion. Pretty good control. Does keep one of his phoenixes alive there. Now that the hydras are out, though, he's not going to be able to do much about that. The roaches are coming home. Looks like he wanted to put a bit of pressure on or scare the Protoss, maybe deny a 3rd. But once again, we're not seeing any of that out of our Protoss player just yet. Another 10 drones when that pops. It'll put him up to 56, but for the last little bit, the Protoss has actually been ahead on workers here. We see a big splash of gateways going down. This is about as much economy as Huk is going to want now if he's going to go for some pressure. More supply block once again happening to Hyun. He's really going to have to use some of his money and keep getting out more overlords. Pretty good little pickoffs here. There's no reason not to do this as Huk. He's got this energy to use. He might as well try to pick off a few units here and there until the hydras come out. Then he is going to have to back right the hell off. These bases really haven't done too much yet. He's trying to get a few more drones now, but it's been kind of a low econ game for Hyun this far, which is really surprising because he hasn't put really any pressure on. He does have a lead in the overall supply. A lot of that has to do with pumping out a giant pile of roaches and hydras, though. Do we have an infestation pit down right now? Doesn't look that way. I would expect to be seeing one here in the near future, so we can get up to hive tech and maybe trap down a few of these phoenixes. But it doesn't look like there's any interest out of Huk in getting more. It's a pretty good sized army, but I'm still a bigger fan of Huk getting a 3rd base, using this army to secure a 3rd base, and then pushing up for a more gargantuan army, getting out some Colossus, or going for that triple Stargate play like we see out of Alicia and other top level Protoss players. This gateway style army I just don't think is going to hold up against the Roach Hydra. Even though it's only 0-1 on this side, it's 0, well, he's got +2 weapons, so it's not worthless. This map is kind of funky in a sense. If you notice that there's a lot of very narrow spaces in here, and so I really don't like too much whenever I'm playing as Zerg. There's too much opportunity to lose a lot. Pretty bold blink forward there from Huk, but he's got enough backing this. He's got enough sentries here to feel pretty safe. Hyun's just going to have to sacrifice that. These workers, at least he saved most of them. We'll be able to come back down here. Worker-wise, he's sitting pretty decent, so he should be feeling alright. Does need to think about other bases, and Huk still hasn't gone for a third. Still focusing on his upgrades. Going to be getting that +3 here really fast. But with other Colossus, he's not going to be able to deal with these hydras well enough, I don't think. And we see on this side, there's been no worry about getting a Spire from our Zerg player, simply because there's no Colossus tech inbound. There's no big play for any type of air units. I just think that these hydras, even though their upgrades are less, their DPS is just too high. They'll cut right through this very simple gateway army. Good force fields, good time warps. One thing that Hyun probably noticed about this army is that there's very few zealots in it. So having this big Zergling swarm will actually be very effective at trying to deal with this army and surrounding these Blink Stalkers. That's something I notice a lot when I'm playing against a Protoss, is what the zealot count is at. If there's no zealots in there, your Zerglings, if you've got overwhelming numbers, will just cut through this kind of army. Vice versa, if he's got a ton of zealots, you're not going to be able to do well with your Zerglings, just because these guys, particularly if they're upgraded like Huk has here, will just slaughter through these Zerglings. It looks as though Huk's pretty aware that there's going to be another base down at the bottom. He's just got to be very careful not to get trapped by this very, very fast Zerg army. That's very, very aggressive. His blink cooldown is almost finished. He gets out of there. Didn't lose too much. I think that was probably worth it from Huk. He's still keeping in this game right now, but he can't stand toe-to-toe with this. He has got to get out of there. Even with this big increase, particularly this +3 about to finish in upgrades, he's not going to be able to deal with this well enough. Kind of funky little destructible rocks just chilling out here. In an interesting sense, I usually see Hyun play very, very aggressive games, and in this case, he seems to be a little bit more okay with just playing a pretty standard safe game. Huk's only now at the 17-minute mark, halfway done his Nexus for his third base. Main's going to be mined out soon. Natural starting to get dwindled. This will be gone here in a few minutes. The Spire is on the way. I don't agree with Mutalisks if that's the way it's going. These super upgraded Blink Stalkers are just going to cut through Mutas. He might just be getting it so he can have Corruptors in case Colossus tech does emerge. We do see Storms as the method of choice here. Storm is not finished yet for the Protoss player, so he's getting himself caught in a pretty bad spot now. If Storm is finished, this might be a different story, but this is just way too many Hydras. And you usually don't see this much Hydras in a mix. They're just too expensive. You generally use them to complement roaches. But in this case, looking at the type of composition of Huk, Hydras is absolutely perfect. Huk's in a pretty tough spot now that he lost that Nexus. Does he have charge on these? He does not have charge. Charge would have been pretty good at closing the distance against some of these Hydras and Roaches. But they're still going to just get cut through. There's no armor on any of these units. Be very careful with those Blink Stalkers. It's kind of his backbone to this army here. That's pretty bad. Storms are ready now, though. Yeah, but he does have a few storms available. Pretty good storms. Got a lot of damage in. again, the armor on these hydralisks is obviously light, so storms will cut to them pretty bad. Unfortunately, there's just so much numbers here from Hyun. He doesn't even have to trade cost effectively. Very interesting game out of Hyun. Not what I've come to expect him in a lot of his games. Very conservative. Didn't put that pressure on. Let Huk really dictate the pace of that game until he felt comfortable enough. It looks like he was going to transition into mutas, which I think would have been really difficult had Huk been able to hold on here. Those really upgraded stalkers, archons, storms. I think Huk would have been able to deal with that just fine. But this is a best of 3, and game 1 goes to Hyun. Tune in soon. I should have game for you guys right away.